You book a cruise, you pay it off, and you assume that price is locked. Well, a lot of people think that. They think that once that final payment is done, that's it. Nothing changes unless they personally add something. But that's not always true, because buried in a lot of cruise contracts is language that allows the cruise line to add an extra fuel fee under certain conditions. Now, most people never read that part, and honestly, most people do not even know it exists. But when oil prices jump like we're seeing right now, suddenly that fine print matters a lot more than it did a few weeks ago. Also this week, Norwegian Luna gets christened in Miami. And yes, one of her ports gives me a little bit of extra excitement, I'll tell you why. And I've also got a few updates on a passenger arrested after a disgusting sauna incident, a crew member detained after a theft during a port of call, medevacs off 2 Carnival ships in one day, and a death aboard a Royal Caribbean sailing. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Melissa, a university professor who loves to cruise and who loves to talk ship. So let's start with the thing that can mess with people's vacation budget really fast, and that is fuel surcharge language. Oil prices have spiked during this conflict in the Middle East, and fuel is one of the biggest operating costs in cruising. Cruise ships, they burn a lot of it. They're basically floating cities. That means when fuel costs rise sharply, cruise lines start looking a lot harder at the clauses in their own contracts that give them the leeway to pass along some of that pain to us, the passengers. And I want to be clear here, because this is exactly where people get caught off guard. Now, I'm not saying every line is adding these fees right now. I am saying that the contract language is there, it is real, and it gives them the room to act if they decide the economics justify it. Now, Carnival's contract says that it can reintroduce a fuel supplement of up to $9 per person per day if oil goes above its stated trigger. Norwegian says it can add up to $10 per passenger per day, and yes, it can apply even to bookings that are already paid in full. Royal Caribbean's US contract allows up to $12 per guest per day if fuel or natural gas prices go above the thresholds laid out in its terms. Now, that might sound abstract and like no big deal until you actually run the math and look at the numbers, and those can add up. So take, for example, a family of 4 on a 7-night cruise. Under Carnival's cap, you're looking at as much as $252. Under Norwegian's, that could be $280, and under Royal Caribbean's, you're talking $336. Now, this is not some tiny little nuisance fee. This is not throwaway money. That's an excursion budget. That is specialty dining for a week. That's airfare in some cases if you ball on a budget like I do and you fly the Walmart of the skies, which is Frontier or Allegiant. That's real money. And that matters even more because most people are not mentally budgeting for this stuff after they think the cruise is already paid in full. And I think this is why this matters right now, even though most of the big North American lines have not announced new fuel surcharges as of yet. Other cruise brands have already moved in that direction for new bookings in March, so this is no longer some weird contract clause that nobody will ever see. You're already seeing the concept move from theoretical to practical in the wider industry. And that is before you even get to the bigger regional disruption. Ships are being forced to change plans, repositionings are getting wrecked, operating costs get uglier, insurance pressures go up, logistics get messier. So even if passengers do not love hearing about the fuel clauses, this is exactly the kind of an environment where those clauses start looking a lot more relevant from the cruise line side. Now, do I think people should panic? No, I do not think panic helps anybody, but I do think people should stop acting like the cruise fare is always frozen after the final payment, because those contracts do not support that level of confidence. So my practical takeaway here is really simple. If you have a cruise booked, especially one far enough out that the line still has room to make changes, take a minute, read the actual terms for your brand. Not the marketing page or the rah-rah FAQ, the actual contract of carriage, your passenger contract. Because if this situation drags on, and even when the situation ends, it's gonna have a ripple effect for a long time to come, people are gonna start finding out the hard way that they agreed to these things without even realizing it. Now let's move on to something a little bit more fun, because Norwegian Luna is getting christened in Miami. This is Norwegian's newest ship and is one of the line's big headline vessels going into the next wave of Caribbean marketing. She carries almost 3,600 guests at double occupancy, has 1,600 crew, and she heads straight into her inaugural Caribbean season after the Miami debut. From April through November of 2026, Luna is scheduled for 3- and 4-night Bahamas sailings and 7-day Eastern Caribbean itineraries. Ports include Puerto Plata, St. Thomas, and Great Stirrup Cay. Then later in November, she's going to shift over to Western Caribbean routes, and in April 2027, she starts Bermuda cruises from New York, which I think is a pretty smart move for people in the Northeast who want something easier than having to fly to Florida all the time. And by the way, I did a Bermuda cruise out of Norfolk back in the fall. Wonderful experience. I have videos about all of this that you can find on my channel. I'll also drop the link below if you want to check that out. Now, the big onboard headline feature is the Aqua Slide Coaster, which Norwegian has leaned on hard as its signature attraction. They're obviously trying to compete with Royal Caribbean and their icon class and their bigger is better and more thrills mentality. And I get why. This is one of those things that sounds weird enough that people pay attention to. It's part water slide, it's part coaster, it's very marketable, it's made for TikTok videos, and it is also the kind kind of thing than a ship tour, people are gonna eat up. Now, beyond that, Luna has a whole bunch of other things, different dining venues, a bunch of cool stuff. So they're clearly positioning the ship as one of these newer gin vessels where the line wants the ship itself to feel like a theme park. So I wanna know what you think about this theme parkification of cruise ships. Is it your vibe? Do you love it? Is bigger, better, faster your thing? Or do you prefer just a traditional cruise ship? And one thing I'm excited about is, as I mentioned, one of Luna's ports of call is Puerto Plata. And just a shameless little plug, I do have a Puerto Plata signature shore experience. It's the first one I've ever offered. It's wildly successful so far. So if you're taking a cruise to Puerto Plata, make sure you check that out. I will drop the link below. It's also a really great deal. Now, sticking with Norwegian, let's talk Great Stirrup Cay, because last week I told you about the drink package situation that looked like it had reversed, and now the picture is a lot clearer. Guests with free at sea or more at sea beverage packages will continue to have those package benefits honored on Great Stirrup Cay. And that matters because people were rightfully irritated by the idea that Norwegian would sell them a beverage package and then carve out its own private island as some weird exception, which, side note, Carnival does do that, as does Holland America, which is owned by Carnival Corporation. And I think that's highway robbery, absolutely ridiculous, and at PMO. But Norwegian was trying to pull those kind of shenanigans too, and that was never gonna go over well. Norwegian cruisers are like, nah, not happening here. So for now, the practical answer is if you have one of those beverage packages, Great Stirrup Cay is still included in that benefit. Good. That's how it should be, in my humble opinion. Norwegian is also still pushing forward with major upgrades on the island, Great Stirrup Cay, and the biggest infrastructure story is the pier situation. The company says Great Stirrup Cay now has a pier and a tram service, but tendering, which I hate tendering, I actually avoid tender ports, but tendering here is expected to resume temporarily starting April 1st, while the final phase of the two-ship pier project is completed through the summer. And that is the kind of detail people need to hear before they show up assuming that this whole issue is solved forever. So my advice for spring and early summer sailings, very simple. Plan as if this could still operate like a tender port. Build your expectations around that. Don't go into it thinking every sailing is suddenly gonna have this flawless, easy pier access just because the project exists and they have made progress. Cruise lines love announcing infrastructure progress. I think they're always way too optimistic and aggressive about it. We saw that recently with Royal Caribbean and their Royal Beach Club in Nassau, but it's us as passengers who have to live with the practical reality. So if you ever book a cruise with some big new infrastructure thing coming down the pipeline, if you're one of those first people there when it's supposed to be done, don't be surprised if it's not done yet. Now, the water park timeline matters too. Great Tides Water Park is currently slated for summer 2026 with a ton of water slides, an 800-foot dynamic river, and a large family splash area. And honestly, if Norwegian executes that well, it gives them a much stronger private island experience because, let's just call it what it is, private destination competition, it has gotten fierce. These islands are not just a free, easy, lazy beach day anymore, where it's the beach and a chair and that's it. Cruise lines are doing this theme parkification on their private islands too. They're turning them into major selling points in their own right with pools, clubs, trams, huge family zones, thrill attractions, zip lines, all of this thing, the whole shebang. And the private island is now part of the ship's sales pitch. And they're actually wonderful business propositions for cruise lines because they have a captive audience. You're stuck there, you're not navigating around, spending money with third-party excursion providers or wandering around your own. You're gonna be there spending money. So Norwegian does need Great Stirrup Cay to feel like a serious asset, not some half-finished, maybe someday concept. So that pier matters, the water park matters, the drink package decision, and the way they fumbled the ball on that, but then reverse course, that matters. All of this feeds into whether passengers feel like Norwegian is keeping pace with what their competitors are doing. Now let's zoom back to the Middle East disruption because it ties directly into the fuel story and the bigger state of the industry right now. 6 cruise ships are still stuck in the Arabian Gulf because the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively shut to normal repositioning traffic. Industry reporting says the affected ships mostly include MSC ships and some other international lines, not North American lines. And that is a serious operational mess. These are not minor schedule hiccups or itinerary changes. These are ships that cannot just do what they were supposed to do next. And once ships start getting stuck, that ripple effect, it spreads fast. You start looking at canceled sailings, modified itineraries, tons of crew complications, supply issues, passenger disruption, and all the ugly cost issues that come up with trying to salvage a plan that just no longer works. Cruise lines have already canceled more sailings because of this disruption. Obviously, my advice to cruisers, don't even imagine or think or plan or try to travel to the Middle East, even on a cruise ship, I would say at all in 2026, because cruise lines, they're having to untangle this mess. So the oil spike, the contract language, the stranded ships, the itinerary change, changes. All of these live in the same ecosystem. One problem feeds into another and can have a big ripple effect that can impact you even if you think you're not directly affected. Now let me update you on a few other interesting cruise stories, some of them quite tragic, starting with this one. A passenger died during Royal Caribbean's Anthem of the Seas sailing in New Zealand waters. Police were notified on March 25th and inquiries were being made for the coroner. At the time I made this video, no cause of death has been publicly released. Then there are not one but two separate U.S. Coast Guard medevacs from Carnival ships on the same day, one on Carnival Jubilee and one on Carnival Valor, with both patients taken to a New Orleans hospital. And yes, you know, I am going to tell you, get your travel insurance. I have a travel insurance guide for cruisers. I will drop the link below. I also have a comprehensive YouTube video. Again, I don't care where you get it, from whom you get it, just get it and get it before your next trip. And if you get an annual plan, it covers not just your cruises, but all your land travel too, including even road trips. Now, let me tell you about a real disgusting case, the sauna case. Authorities say a 39-year-old Florida man exposed himself and touched himself in front of two teenagers in a sauna aboard Celebrity Eclipse. Thankfully, he was arrested after the ship returned to Port Everglades and charged with 2 counts of indecent exposure. Absolutely disgusting and vile behavior. And I'm thrilled that this man got arrested, and I hope they throw the book at him. And I hope he goes to prison for a very long time because that's where he belongs. But this is your reminder, if you are a parent of tweens and teens, that is me as well. Sometimes it's easy on a cruise to say, okay, we're in this contained environment, there's lots of cameras, I feel safe, I'm gonna let them wander, have some freedom and independence. You gotta stay vigilant. And also, speaking of legal trouble, a crew member found himself in hot water after allegedly shoplifting during a Port Canaveral call, and he was turned over to federal authorities. That is one hell of a way to torch your job and your future in one shot. So there we have it. Talk ship in the comments. Let me know what you think about these things. Let me know if you're impacted by the global conflict, if you're worried about fuel prices, and if you're cruising or traveling soon, stay safe and happy cruising.